Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. Nicolás Maduro is set to make his first court appearance in New York. The leader of the Venezuelan regime has been indicted on charges including drug trafficking, narco-terrorism, and arms violations. Lawmakers react to the capture of Nicolás Maduro, Republicans praising the move, while Democrats want to restrict the Trump administration. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is no longer running for a third term. How he explains his decision amid nationwide attention on alleged fraud in his state. And the Pentagon is censuring Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth explains the decision and what happens next. A Cincinnati man is in custody after allegedly vandalizing Vice President J.D. Vance's home, breaking windows, and damaging a vehicle.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Breaking just now, Venezuelan regime leader Nicolás Maduro pleaded not guilty to drug trafficking and weapons charges. He and his wife, Cilia Flores, made their first court appearances in New York City. His wife also entered a not guilty plea. Maduro's indictment alleges he and other Venezuelan leaders abused their position of public trust to import tons of cocaine into the United States. It also says Maduro and his allies provided law enforcement and cover and logistical support to major drug trafficking groups such as the Sinaloa cartel and the Tren de Aragua gang. After being read a summary of the charges against him, Maduro told Judge Alvin Hellerstein in Spanish, quote, "I am not guilty," adding, quote, "I am a decent man. I am still the president of my country." Maduro's lawyer said he is not seeking release at this time on bail, but that he may later. The next court hearing in the case will be March 17th at 11 a.m. Maduro is accused of selling Venezuelan diplomatic passports to known drug traffickers. He's also charged with facilitating flights under diplomatic cover to bring drug proceeds back from Mexico to Venezuela. He was indicted on 4 counts, including narco-terrorism, weapons offenses, and drug trafficking. His wife, Cilia Flores, is accused of ordering kidnappings and murders and accepting bribes. It could be several months or even more than a year before Maduro stands trial. He will be detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, the same jail where Luigi Mangione is being held.
President Trump issued a stern warning to interim leader Delcy Rodriguez.
I just say that she will face a situation probably worse than Maduro, because, Maduro gave up.
Trump says his administration won't tolerate what he described as her defiant rejection of U.S. intervention. The president says a second strike on Venezuela is possible if its leaders, quote, do not behave. Rodriguez wrote on Facebook that Venezuela invited the U.S. government to collaborate with them on an agenda of cooperation oriented towards shared development within the framework of international law, but added that President Nicolás Maduro's message has always been that the people of Venezuela and the region deserve peace and dialogue, not war. President Trump also discussed the current leadership in Venezuela aboard Air Force One today.
And don't ask me who's in charge, because I'll give you an answer and it'll be very controversial.
What does that mean?
It means we're in charge.
Have you spoken with her?
We're in charge.
Trump says they have been in contact with service members who were injured during the operation, saying they are all in good shape.
Amazing talent and tremendous patriotism, bravery. The bravery was incredible. Lindsay, they got off the helicopter and the bullets were flying all over the place. As you know, one of the helicopters got hit pretty badly, but we got everything back. Got everything back and nobody killed.
The president pushed back on reporters, saying he has changed his stance on nation building.
This isn't a country that's on the other side of the world. This isn't a country like we have to travel 24 hours in an airplane. This is Venezuela. It's in our area, the Don Road Doctrine. We're in the business of having countries around us that are viable and successful.
Trump elaborated on what will happen with the country's oil.
So we're going to have the big oil companies go in. They're going to fix the infrastructure. They're going to invest money. we're not going to invest anything. We're going to just take care of the country. We're going to cherish the country. We're going to take care, more importantly, of the people, including Venezuelans that are living in our country.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio also discussed oil and the influence of U.S. adversaries in the region, speaking on Meet the Press.
What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Rubio says the operation in Venezuela didn't need congressional approval because it was a law enforcement operation with no invasion or occupation. He added that the Pentagon will maintain its military blockade around Venezuela to apply leverage on the country's socialist regime. Rubio criticized reports that the UN denied Maduro's involvement in the drug trade.
I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. Nicolás Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
A significant portion of Maduro's security team was killed in the U.S. operation, according to Venezuelan officials. Venezuelans at a rally in Florida yesterday thanked President Trump for ousting the dictator Maduro.
Today I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's some hope.
We are very, very much thankful to President Trump for this commitment to eliminate Maduro from that has been kidnapping the whole society, our whole economy, who has been destroyed, the country completely looted.
And Venezuelans living in Puerto Rico rallied in its capital San Juan yesterday to celebrate the capture of Maduro. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thanks to Daniel for that report. Venezuela's government is ordering police to arrest anyone involved in supporting the U.S. military operation in the country. It's the latest attack on the rights of the Venezuelan people by the nation's government. The order to arrest people sympathizing with the operation is part of a decree the government published. The document orders law enforcement to immediately begin the national search and capture of everyone involved in support of the operation. The decree has been enforced since Saturday, but was published in full today. And next, Switzerland has responded to Maduro's capture by freeing any of his assets in the country. The Swiss government said this will prevent any assets that may have been obtained illegally from being moved out of the country. This freeze takes effect immediately and applies to Maduro and people close to him. The Swiss government did not say how many assets are linked to Maduro. It added that no current member of Venezuela's government is affected by the freeze. The freeze will remain valid for 4 years until further notice. And President Trump says drug traffickers in Colombia and Mexico could be facing action by the U.S. military. The president also predicted that Cuba's communist regime is likely to fall.
That Cuba is ready to fall. You know? Yes. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they can hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
You were just talking about Cuba and what could come next there. Are you considering U.S. action in Cuba?
We're not. I think it's just going to fall. I don't think we need any action. It looks like it's going down. It's going down for the count. You ever watch a fight?
I have.
They go down for the count. And Cuba looks like it's going down. What do you think, Howard? It's going.
The president also discussed Colombia, describing it as very sick. Trump said the country is run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. The president said, quote, he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you. Seemingly referring to Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Trump also warned that the United States may have to, quote, do something with Mexico. Trump said the country's government is not doing enough to combat drug cartels, saying they're very strong in Mexico. The president said he has offered troops to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum to help combat drug trafficking, but he said Sheinbaum was just not willing and a little afraid. We'll be keeping you updated there. And next, a man is in custody after allegedly vandalizing the home of Vice President J.D. Vance this morning. 26-year-old William DeFore faces multiple charges, including criminal damage, vandalism, and trespassing. Authorities say he broke 4 windows at Vance's home in Cincinnati and also caused damage to a vehicle. The Secret Service contacted Cincinnati police around 12:15 a.m. after spotting a man on the property. DeFore was quickly detained and, according to local media, responded, "I don't know," when advised of his rights. Vance and his family were out of town at the time. DeFore has a prior vandalism conviction and will be arraigned tomorrow. Action News 13 in Cincinnati reports that a high bond has been recommended due to the suspect's criminal history. And in an X post this morning, Vice President Vance said, quote, "A crazy person had tried to break into his Ohio home by hammering on the windows," noting that he and his family were not there at the time. He said he appreciated everyone's well wishes about the attack and was grateful to the Secret Service and the Cincinnati police for responding quickly. The vice president also asked media not to show pictures of the house with holes in the windows, saying they try to protect their kids, quote, "as much as possible from the realities of this life of public service." All right, next, the Pentagon is censuring Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly for what they call reckless misconduct. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth also plans to demote the military veteran. In a statement on X today, Hegseth said this is due to a video message from last November. In that video, if you recall, Kelly and 5 other Democratic lawmakers called on U.S. service members to refuse what they called illegal orders. They didn't specify what they think is an illegal order, but their video came amid the Trump administration's pressure campaign on Venezuelan drug boats. Hegseth called the video reckless and seditious, saying it sought to undermine good order and military discipline. The War Secretary said he will demote Kelly's military rank, which is currently Navy captain, within 45 days. This will affect Kelly's military pension. The senator has 30 days to respond. The Pentagon's actions stop short of the Trump administration's threat of a trial. And Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is no longer seeking re-election. This comes amid a welfare fraud scandal in his state that's grabbed nationwide attention. In a statement on X today, Walz said he's no longer running for a 3rd term. In his words, "Every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of the race and let others worry about the election while I focus on the work." The Trump administration has deepened its investigation into alleged welfare fraud in Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz accuses Trump and his allies of politicizing the situation. Minnesota officials have until Friday to provide information about providers and parents who receive federal funds for child care. Up ahead, insights from our NTD correspondent covering the recent capture of Nicolás Maduro, the arraignment on narco-terrorism and drug trafficking charges. That story and more ahead. Welcome back. Joining us for insight now on the U.S. capture of the designated illegitimate leader of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, is NTD Washington correspondent Luis Martinez. Good to have you with us today, Luis. Venezuelans have been protesting for freedom for 27 years. And I know, Luis, you've been watching and covering this event very closely. How are Venezuelans feeling right now?
Well, I think elated and happy and relieved are a few of the adjectives that can be used to describe how Venezuelans are feeling at home and abroad. In Venezuela, I talked to my own family who's still there and friends of ours that are still in Venezuela. Most of them are celebrating the end of the dictatorship. They're, of course, also waiting to see what's going to happen. There's an important context for our audience is that this isn't the first time that the dictatorship has left power in the past 27 years. Back in 2002, when Chavez was leading the Venezuelan regime, he was ousted for about 48 hours. And during that period, of course, a lot of people celebrated, but then he was reinstated into power. So I think Venezuelans back home are waiting to see what the next steps are, waiting to see what the now President Delcy Rodriguez will do, and if the removal of Maduro means a slow transition into democratic order, or it just means a reshuffling of the regime structure. Abroad, of course, I've also talked to exiled community. Everyone's very happy. There's a comment that must be said that no one is happy that their capital city is being bombed, or happy particularly that foreign military has to intervene, but they're definitely happy that a dictator that has caused terrible pain and harm to the country, and that over a third of the population had to leave because of his policies, has been now removed, and today being arraigned in a court in New York.
Certainly, and developments seem to be happening very quickly at this time. Maduro was captured inside a heavily fortified military fortress. What did it take to capture him?
Of course, this is Fuerte Tuna, which is the largest military fort in the capital city. Again, personal experience. I come from a military family in Venezuela, and family of officers would have access to this fort. So I spent many of my weekends, my childhood weekends, in this military fort. In the past few months, they actually nicknamed Maduro in circles in Venezuela the mayor of Fuerte Tuna instead of the president of Venezuela, because he was holed up in this military fort with his loyalist forces around. We know now, also confirmed by the Cuban government, that 32 of the people that were killed during this audacious raid by the U.S. military were Cuban agents. That's the most inner circle of protection that was guarding Nicolás Maduro. And we also, of course, know that the U.S. military had to eliminate air defense systems on its path from the coast into Caracas to Fuerte Tuna, retrieve Nicolás Maduro, that apparently was captured before being able to enter a fortified panic room, and then extracted with no loss of life on American troops. Only, I think, one helicopter received fire, but was able to fly back safely to its base. So also all the information that we have would suggest that there were internal collaborators, so people within Maduro's inner circle and within the Venezuelan armed forces that had contacts with the American military and intelligence to allow for this operation. We know that the Delta Force team that went in to retrieve Maduro had been training at a compound that was built as a perfect replica of the quote-unquote fortress where Maduro was hiding. So there was intelligence from inside Maduro's circle as to the schematics of where he was going to be, when he was going to be there, and how to enter and exit. And of course, it's worth mentioning that none of the air defense systems that Venezuela has, and they have Russian and Iranian S-300 air defense systems. They have over 5,000 handheld Igla-S Russian air defense missiles. None of them were active or used, which would suggest that either U.S. military and its electronic interference systems are incredibly advanced, and or that there were components of the Venezuelan armed forces that stood down those equipments in order for the raid to happen.
Important insights and considerations there. Looking now at Maduro's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last month, yet she's not assuming the leadership. And President Trump, of course, was called out by her, and she appreciated him in her speech accepting the prize. What factors are at play here in the fact that she's not taking the stand now?
Well, first of all, Maria Corina Machado is the most prominent face of the Venezuelan opposition internationally. She won the Nobel Peace Prize, but she was not the one who ran for office in last year's presidential elections in Venezuela. It was her surrogate Edmundo Gonzalez, because Maria Corina was actually barred by the Nicolás Maduro regime from being a candidate. So in any case, if someone would be able to take over power in Venezuela with some sort of legitimacy, it would be Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the official or the actual winner of those elections of last year, July 28th. Now, the proof of the vote count right now is secured in the vaults of the National Bank in Panama. But it's also important to understand that during a transition from an authoritarian regime into democracy, there's a lot of elements within the Venezuelan regime that would like to find assurances that they will not have the same fate that Nicolás Maduro. So I would believe that the Trump administration allowing for the Maduro regime's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, to assume power right now is to allow for a period of transition before either new elections are called or Edmundo Gonzalez, who won last year's elections, is put into place. Let's remember, it's over 27 years of regime control of all the security forces, of all the intelligence apparatus, of the national police and the armed forces, all people who have been making money through these narco-terrorist networks that were led by Nicolás Maduro, that are now wondering whether or not there's a place for them in a post-Maduro Venezuela. And that is going to be a very delicate balance to strike because, unfortunately, they are the ones who have the weapons. They are the ones who have the means of repression. And just changing who's atop of that structure doesn't mean that the entire structure is going to obey a new legitimate president.
Now, President Trump has said that the U.S. is in charge in Venezuela, at least right now. What does that look like? And if you could just parse that out for us.
Of course, I think a lot of people are being carried away by that headline and that, imperialist and anti-colonial sentiments being fed by that headline. There's precedent to this. And there's precedent to this in the region. If we look at Panama in 1989, when Manuel Noriega was deposed during Operation Just Cause, and a newly elected democratic government took over in Panama, pretty much every high-level government official, every minister, and even the president had a shadow figure within the United States government that would advise and would serve to consult and would help that new government have a path forward through democracy and through peaceful means to transition from a military authoritarian government to a peaceful civilian government. So I think that that's probably what's going to happen. And President Trump mentioned that there's going to be a team of his administration that will oversee the transition and that things are handled properly in Venezuela, which does not mean that it is the U.S. government that is now in control of the country, but that will help to advise, consult, and serve to guide any new and incoming administration into a civilian administration, a democratic civilian administration of the country.
Any more thoughts on this, Trump saying that there could be U.S. boots on the ground in Venezuela, perhaps as part of this transition?
Yes, I think it's messaging, right? So, like, if you are part of the Maduro regime and you just saw what happened, you might be thinking, well, okay, Maduro has been deposed. Maybe we can just reshuffle power amongst ourselves and continue the authoritarian control over Venezuela. But by knowing that the United States has 1/3 of its Navy still parked just 12 miles outside of your coast, and that they have the ability to strike as they did during Operation Absolute Resolve, will make them think twice on whether they want to continue an authoritarian control of the country or allow for this democratic transition. So I think it's messaging from the Trump administration to first say that they were ready for a second strike that wasn't necessary, and that they're ready also to put boots in the ground in case the transition doesn't go smoothly. I don't think that we will see that happening in the near future. There's a lot of signals that would show, and even from the president who just took power in Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, saying that they want to have good relations with the United States, good economic ties to the United States. So we will likely just see more rhetoric coming from both sides in order to appease the elements that need to be appeased for this to go smoothly and without further bloodshed.
Luis Martinez, thank you so much for your time today and your insights. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
And we are turning now to South Florida, where officials are celebrating what they call a new day of freedom for Venezuela. And they're discussing the situation there. But they're also talking about how it affects the U.S. Coming up in our show today, we'll be speaking with Chris Bobb. He's in Doral with the story, and I see him there now. Chris, good to see you again. What message are they trying to send today?
Well, Steph, we heard from a number of people here. We had Senator Rick Scott from Florida. We had Senator Ashley Moody, as well as another congressman who represents the area. They talked about what a tremendous victory this was for not only the American people, but also the Venezuelan people. Inside that restaurant behind me, there was tens of Venezuelan Americans who were clapping and applauding every time the name Marco Rubio was mentioned, or Donald Trump. They were very excited for the future of their country, but they're also reflecting and hoping and praying that things turn out much better than what had happened under Maduro. We have some clips about why this is in America's interest with Rick Scott. Let's listen.
Standing by for those sound bites. And
well, we also have Ashley Moody as well, if you don't have that one. But I can paraphrase if worse comes to worse.
Yeah, it's just to begin with, what was said?
Far too long, the Venezuelan people have lived under a dictator who is a criminal, a drug trafficker, who went through position after position in Venezuela and used those positions for his own profit, for his cronies, and he hijacked that government. He was never the legitimate leader. He is not the rightful president. Indeed, he is a criminal that has now been brought here to the United States to face justice, as he should have been a long time ago.
So you got it now. That was Ashley Moody talking about the Maduro regime, how he's not a legitimate leader. He is a criminal, a narcotics trafficker, a drug dealer. Those were the words that were echoed by the people. I also spoke behind me not only to elected officials, but also to people who had left Venezuela. Either more recently, there were some people there who were around my age in their 20s, but there were also people who left around the time that Hugo Chavez took over during the first socialist regime. And they shared with me that the levels of corruption under Maduro made it impossible for them to return home. And what Trump does by capturing Maduro and taking him here and trying him is giving them hope that there's going to be a democratic Venezuela in the future, that there's hope that they'll be able to return back home. Now, I also spoke to a Cuban-American representative from Miami. He was born in Cuba, and then he emigrated here with his parents when Castro took over. We're going to listen to his clip now.
I'm heartened also by the words that were spoken by the president yesterday, saying he's now turned his eye a little bit over to Cuba.
Who was surrounding Nicolás Maduro when U.S. troops went in? Cubans. Cuban security was. So Cuba has basically taken over Venezuela. This little bankrupt little island was in charge of Venezuela. So they're the cancer of our hemisphere. That regime is in its weakest position it's been in decades. Venezuela was one of the states propping it up. Now that's gone away. We think that Cuba may just fall under the weight of its own incompetency and corruption and abuses of its people.
Representative Carlos Jimenez there talking about Cuba being propped up by Venezuela and vice versa. You saw that a number of, a couple dozen Cubans were killed when the U.S. came and they captured Maduro. So we're going to be continuing to follow what goes on there, and we're going to see if Cuba is next on the list.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to just cover a little of what stood out to you there while our team prepares the soundbite that you spoke of earlier, is there anything that you want to highlight there from your coverage?
Yeah, so what I was really impressed with was the ability for some of the younger individuals there to speak to me, and we will have these clips later, probably during the evening news, about the true nature of socialism and how it impacted them when they were growing up in Venezuela. I had one story which really touched me of a guy explaining when he was young. He could take a shower. There was no problem. Actually, one said that they had televisions in Havana before they had them in many parts of the United States. But as he got older, and this young kid also told me, they had to fill up large buckets of water to take showers in the capital city of Havana. They had to, scrape together what they could to survive. So there's a lot of hope and promise in their eyes. Even though they're asylum seekers here now and they're refugees, they want to return home, and they're very hopeful that the future will be better for them.
Yeah, great insights there, and something that most Americans and people around the world may have no sense of what life is really like there on the ground. Just checking one more time if we have that soundbite from our team. It will be great to see that on the evening news today. And folks, I recommend you stick around to watch it. But thank you so much, Chris. Good to speak with you. Lawmakers are returning to Capitol Hill with a pressing to-do list. The Senate convenes today for the second session of the 119th Congress. The House is set to convene tomorrow. That chamber is poised to vote on extending newly expired Obamacare subsidies. The issue is a priority for Democrats, and some House Republicans have broken ranks to push the matter. And another government shutdown deadline is at the end of this month. The Republican majority in the House is shrinking today. It's the final day in Congress for outgoing Representative Majorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. She announced her resignation in November. Her departure leaves the House with 219 Republicans and 213 Democrats. 3 seats are vacant. The top GOP total is set to contract even more when 2 Democrats are competing in a special election runoff this month in Texas. Meanwhile, lawmakers were quick to weigh in on the developments in Venezuela. Many Republicans and at least one Democrat welcomed the news, while Democratic leaders are now forcing a vote to block the Trump administration from taking future action. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
Following the administration's removal of Venezuela's communist dictator, Republicans praised the action as successfully protecting Americans.
We do know that Nicolás Maduro, an illegitimate communist dictator and drug trafficker, is in prison in the United States, and that's a great thing. What we want is a future Venezuelan government that will be pro-American, that will contribute to stability, order, and prosperity, not only in Venezuela, but in our own backyard.
House Speaker Mike Johnson reminding Americans that Maduro was indicted by U.S. courts, writing he's responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans after years of trafficking illegal drugs and violent cartel members into our country.
This guy's engaged in all kinds of bad behavior, had a 5-year arrest warrant, was not recognized as the head of the state, ran a narco-terrorist criminal operation, and was cozying up to Iran and China, and he was doing it in our hemisphere, which is just wrong. And so the idea that he's now being brought to justice, I think, is a darn good thing. And I think most Americans see it that way.
What we need to do is focus more in Latin America. We've allowed the Chinese, the Russians, North Koreans, and the Iranians to have access or actually make inroads in Latin America because we have been asleep at the wheel. Plus, we've also had these dictatorships that are adverse to the United States. And this hemisphere should be the hemisphere of freedom and democracy.
Senator Eric Schmidt saying the Trump administration is rightfully pivoting the attention of foreign relations away from the Middle East, closer to home.
We're just simply not going to tolerate these tin-pot dictators who flood our country with criminals, who flood our country with drugs, that have hosted the Chinese and other adversaries as a base of operation for them. We're not going to allow that in the Western Hemisphere. So
Meanwhile, many Democrats are taking issue with the administration's actions, some even eager to strip President Trump of his authority to take further actions. Senate Democrats are planning to force a vote this week on whether to formally authorize the U.S. military's actions in Venezuela.
Yes, the United States Congress has sat on the sidelines to allow presidents to become more and more powerful in foreign policy, but that doesn't mean that it suddenly gives a imprimatur of legality to this massive invasion of a foreign country that the American public didn't ask for.
Many Venezuelans in America have celebrated Operation Absolute Resolve. At least one Democrat, Congresswoman Debbie Westerman Schultz, welcomed Maduro's capture. Westerman Schultz represents the highest concentration of Venezuelans living in the U.S. She said she's happy he will be held accountable for his crimes, which includes crimes against humanity as well as narco-trafficking crimes. So I'm not shedding any tears that this reign of terror is over. Trump administration officials are expected to brief lawmakers on the military action in Venezuela this week. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Coming up, a new children's book looks to the enduring nature of familial ties. We speak with the author after this. Fresh off the holiday season, you may be musing, like me, on the fast pace of change on the global and even local scale. But amid all that, our next conversation is a welcome reminder of the grounding nature of enduring family ties. And we're welcoming today Dr. Dale Atkins, a psychologist and the author of a new illustrated children's book, The Turquoise Butterfly. So good to have you with us, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Steph. I'm happy to be back.
Yes, and this is such a beautiful story. It's all about the connection between a grandmother and granddaughter, and tells of their love and their bond over time, yes, and eventual loss. Yes. But the connection beyond that loss. If you could just tell us a bit more about the storyline to start with.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So this is based on my mother, my late mother, Sylvia, and this is Grandma Sylvia, and this is her granddaughter, who is Victoria. And they have a wonderful bond, as you said, and it's all about this adventurous grandmother and this little girl who is a little hesitant and a little bit anxious. And what happens over time, as you said, they have a very special connection because they have a week a year together. And in that week, we see over 3 years the way the little girl becomes more courageous, stronger, more confident, and the grandmother, although still those things, also becomes a little bit more diminished and needs help. And the little girl is able to be strong herself, but also respond as a caregiver, develop empathy, compassion, and a totally different perspective, while her grandmother is still teaching her the wisdom that she has about what it's like to be a part of something that's much bigger than you, which is your family, by telling stories, by creating memories together that the little girl will have as they get older, and as she gets older, and then she loses her grandmother, but she has internalized what the grandmother means to her. And it's about change and transformation. The butterfly, which I'm wearing, is a sign for transformation, and for many people a sign of hope, and a wonderful way to teach children about change and struggle and then freedom. And so I tried to use that throughout the book as a theme.
And this is really a universal theme. This is something every grandchild will face, unfortunately, is losing their grandparent. And in many cases, that is a very precious bond. And what do you hope children who read this book will be instilled with, and what kind of lesson do you hope they take from it?
I hope that children will realize that the grandparent or any older person in their life who's meaningful to them, it doesn't have to be a grandparent, that they have something to teach them, that they are not just babysitters, that they are teachers, they are sharers of memories, that they can give a different perspective, and then the children get that different perspective. And typically, I think that when children feel that they're in the embrace of their grandparents, metaphorically or actually, that they feel safe, they feel secure, they feel understood. And kids who are anxious typically have less anxiety, while the grandparents often feel much more connected and they feel less lonely. So there are some really wonderful changes that happen emotionally, cognitively, socially, and the children learn that they are part of something that is much larger than them, that they are part of the lineage of a family with customs, traditions, and it's the grandparent or the older person who takes on that mantle of being the guide, the model, the teacher. And I think children love that. They ask questions, their curiosity is piqued. And then the grandparents have this role of being sharp because they have to remember the stories, and then they can teach, maybe they have a skill or a hobby that they teach the grandchild. So the grandchild learns something that was from another generation, and they feel this ongoing connection.
So this story is, clearly drawing on a rich personal history in your family. But
yes.
As a psychologist, you've also, I'm sure, observed trends throughout the generations that you're exposed to, that you encounter through your work and through life itself. But what, from a broader perspective, also caused you to write this book in terms of what struggles are you hoping to help people deal with?
I love that question. Thank you. I was writing it first as really an homage to my late mother, but also to try and empower grandparents to be engaged in a way that really helps their children and grandchildren feel grounded. Their children, the parents, to be supported, to be able to help them become better parents, because this is such a difficult time, which really speaks to the essence of the question. This is a book about relationships, and it's a book about change, as I said, and transformation. The wisdom, it's kind of slow wisdom that you can get in a world that is very rushed, that is totally personified by scrolling and paying attention to technology, which is not bad, but it can be overwhelming and particularly invasive for children's emotional development and cognitive development. So I wrote it so that we can really celebrate other ways of relating and being connected. And when you can celebrate being connected to those people who came before you and learn from them, your ancestors, and learn customs and learn dances and share music, that there's something rich and enriching that is totally human and is not related to disconnection. People feel connected because they feel they have so many likes and so many friends online. That's not the connection that we're talking about. And I wrote the book so that we could kind of reinvigorate the opportunity to help people become more humanly connected, more gentle, more compassionate, more empathic. And by the examples in the book of doing things together, of having adventures, of sitting quietly, of looking at nature, being engaged in nature, and letting yourself become connected with nature and with another human being who loves you. It's the eternality of love, that this lasts even after a person dies. And I wanted this to be a message in a very tumultuous, fast-paced, sometimes crazy world. I mean, you know, look at the news. It's 24/7. We need to sometimes take a step back. And grandparents can do this because they're not involved in the day-to-day raising of their grandchildren. They have a little bit more space, and I think that that's really helpful.
Certainly an honored position in the family, I think.
One hopes.
Yes, one hopes. And that was, you know, my experience was our grandparents really were the center. And so as they transitioned out of this physical form and they were no longer with us, we were all kind of had a moment, obviously, of kind of ongoing grief, but it thankfully got transformed into something that carries on because we celebrate them in an ongoing way. And that reinforces our family identity. But I wonder if you have thoughts for people out there, because this really does look at this issue of loss as well, of what people can do to really talk about processing loss with children and that awful thing that can actually become something beautiful in the long run.
The other reason I wrote the book, and thank you for framing it in that way, I think that we are all going to die. Not I think, we are all going to die.
Certainly.
What I'd like people to be able to do is to incorporate that in their life, to not dwell on it, but to say, you know, I'm so happy we're doing these things together. You know, someday when I'm not here, you will remember this, and I hope that you remember with fond memories, and you'll think of me with a smile, or when you hear this song, you'll remember me. And it's part of living to incorporate this. You know, there are many cultures in which people believe that you die twice. Once when your body is no longer functioning, and the second time when people stop saying your name. And you just said we can incorporate and we remember people. We think of them with fondness. Yes, we may think of them laughing also with a tear because they're not here, but they are part of us and they become part of our internal weave. And I just wish people were not afraid to go to that space, because children need to know that love is eternal, that they are part of a long line of people who have contributed to who they are, and that they don't have to be afraid of time when their grandparent or another loved elder is no longer with them, because they have influenced them and they have become part of them, and they can miss them and they can also celebrate them. They're not mutually exclusive. And I feel that in this culture, very often people think that they're not going to die. And I'm not suggesting that we focus only on the death, but that we focus on being in this moment, celebrating it with recognition that there will be a time when we're not here. And that's why we want to maximize the moments that we have with our children and grandchildren, so that they know that we will always be a part of them and that we are enriching each other's lives.
What a beautiful message to bring to any bedside table or even a classroom. This is a message that can be reinforced over and over. It's really culture building. And I know that this is actually your 8th book.
It is.
Many of them most of them focusing on connection and kindness and ways to engender those with familial and other relationships. What made you want to bring this to a children's book?
This is my first children's book, and I kind of wanted to have the message not be so didactic. A lot of my books are about kind of like about books and how to do things books, and I enjoyed that, and it was, I hope, very helpful for people. But these messages about anxiety, about courage, about transformation, about loss, are experiential. And I wanted to be able to show, you know, what it's like to be with your grandmother when you are having such a good time. And then all of a sudden, the current comes and you're drifting away and you're frightened. And then
Someone's there for you.
And then she's there for you.
Yeah.
And she's telling you what to do. Yes. And you can feel brave again, and then you're exhausted. And so these are things that happen to all of us. And I just felt that as a tribute to my mother, who was a wonderful mother and grandmother and great-grandmother, this is kind of what she did. And I wanted to incorporate it with the psychological teachings of how we can calm ourselves. You know, the butterfly hug, you can calm yourself. You can say things that are going to be very calming to yourself, like know that I am here with you when you see a butterfly blue. There are ways to be able to incorporate dealing with children who have anxiety and also dealing with parents or grandparents who are diminishing.
What a beautiful legacy she has left.
Thank you.
For your own family, but now also for anyone who can reach out and get to read this beautiful book, which comes out tomorrow.
It comes out tomorrow, yes.
And if I could just ask you, where can people find it?
Well, they could go online to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They can go to their bookstore. If it's not there, they can order it. Or they can order it directly from the publisher, which is Mascot Books, which is part of Amplify. Or they can go to my website and get it there, and that's www.drdaleatkins.com, and it's DRDALEATKINS. And I just hope that they will enjoy it. I also want to shout out to the illustrator whose name is Amelina Jones, and she did such a beautiful job of bringing these characters to life.
They are very beautiful characters. The turquoise butterfly, you saw it here. Now you know where you can get it. Thank you so much, Dr. Dale Atkins.
Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Thank you.